The morning air was thick with the scent of smoke and damp earth. The villagers of Quora moved slowly, their faces pale with unease. Even the children, who usually ran laughing through the mud paths and played near the river, stayed close to their mothers. The river itself seemed quieter than usual, its surface reflecting the soft morning light like a glass that held a secret. The animals, too, sensed the change. Goats refused to leave their pens, chickens huddled together, and the birds that normally flitted above the huts in joyful chaos remained silent. Even the monkeys that lived in the high trees whispered to one another and kept their distance. Amina sat outside her small hut, her long dark hair falling loosely over her shoulders. She had woken early, as she always did, but her eyes, usually bright and steady, now flickered with tension. Beside her, Keto stretched his long limbs, a shadow of his forest wildness still lingering in the way he moved. Though he was human again, the power of the river that had changed their lives still pulsed quietly inside him. He looked around the village with a cautious awareness, as if sensing something no one else could. Mosey, the massive lion who had never left Amina's side, lay at her feet. His golden, black mane rippled in the breeze, and his glowing yellow eyes scanned the tree line, ears twitching at the smallest sound. The bond between them was more than friendship. It was a connection born of the forest and the magic that pulsed through Amina's veins. Amina rose and walked to the edge of the village, where the grass met the thick forest. She inhaled deeply, the familiar sense of moss, damp leaves, and earth grounding her. Then she paused. A sound carried through the trees. At first it was soft, almost indistinguishable from the rustling of leaves or the distant call of a bird, but it grew louder, more deliberate, more threatening. It was a low, guttural sound, somewhere between a growl and a human cry. Her skin prickled. Keto noticed it too, stepping closer to her, eyes narrowing. Mosey lifted his head, muscles tensing under his thick mane. The air itself seemed to shift, heavy with the presence of something that did not belong to their world. "They are coming," Amina whispered. From the edge of the forest, 3 figures emerged. Their presence silenced the village completely. They walked slowly, deliberately, yet each step seemed to carry weight that pressed down on the hearts of the villagers. They were tall and covered in thick animal skins and bones, their faces partially hidden, but their eyes glowed with a yellow, cold light. Their teeth, sharp and white against the dark of their faces, glinted as they smiled without warmth. The villagers froze. Mothers clutched their children, elders gripped their walking sticks, and the hunters who had once roamed freely through the forest now looked smaller, uncertain, powerless. These were no ordinary people. Even the bravest men of Quora, the ones who had wrestled crocodiles in the river and tracked elephants through the jungle, stepped back. "They smell the river," Keto said in a low voice, his own instincts trembling in recognition. Amina's heart sank. "The Night Eaters," she said, barely above a whisper. She had only heard tales of them, old stories whispered by the elders around the fire. The Night Eaters were ancient hunters who lived beyond the forest, hidden from villages and human eyes for generations. They survived on raw flesh and drank the magic of the rivers and the hearts of animals to sustain their power. They were feared even by the forest spirits, who only appeared when balance was at risk. The 3 figures stopped at the edge of the village. Their eyes glowed brighter as they scanned the villagers. One of them, taller than the others, stepped forward. His voice was a low, guttural murmur, like the blending of many voices together. "You have broken the river's rule," he said. "You have drawn power that is not yours to keep. The river gave life to one child, you allowed 2. Now the balance is broken. We have come to take what remains." A wave of fear passed through the village. Baba Alu, the wise elder, stepped forward, gripping his staff tightly. "We are many," he said, his voice shaking but determined. "You will not harm us." The Night Eater's laugh was low and chilling. "Many numbers mean nothing to us. The river's magic flows in them. We take only what it deserves. That child," he pointed at Keto, "has been marked." Keto stepped forward, his tall figure casting a long shadow in the early light. "You will not take him," he said, his voice steady despite the wild power that surged within him. His yellow eyes, remnants of his time as a cursed beast, met theirs. "He is human now. He belongs here." The leader tilted his head, observing Quito like a predator studying a prey that might yet bite. "Human," he hissed. "He is part river, part forest, part hunger. He is more than human. He will grow beyond your control." Amina moved in front of Quito. Her voice rang out, clear and unwavering. "If you want him, you will have to go through me." Mosey rose, a massive shadow among the villagers. His roar shook the ground, echoing through the trees, warning the intruders that the forest itself stood with them. The Night Eaters took a step back, but only one. Their leader's eyes glowed brighter, and the air grew colder, as if the forest had itself held its breath. "You cannot stop what has already been awakened," the Night Eater hissed. "When the moon turns red, we will return. Then you will understand the cost of breaking the river's rules." With that, they retreated into the dense forest. The villagers remained silent, the fear not leaving their hearts even as the figures vanished. Amina turned to the villagers, her eyes glowing faintly with the magic she had learned to control. "We must prepare," she said. "This is only the beginning. The red moon will rise, and the forest will demand a reckoning." The elders whispered among themselves, recalling the stories of their ancestors. The Night Eaters were not mere myths. They were remnants of a time when the forest's power ruled over humans, when spirits walked freely, and those who disrespected the sacred rivers were punished with hunger and curse. Now, the river's magic had chosen Quito and Amina, and they had unknowingly invited the attention of an ancient, unforgiving power. Throughout the day, the villagers moved cautiously. The hunters checked their traps, but no animal had ventured into the fields. Fish could not be found in the river. Even the trees seemed quieter, leaves hanging still in the humid air. Amina and Quito walked among the villagers, offering calm, yet their minds were focused on the approaching red moon. That night, the moon rose slowly, blood, red and ominous. Its reflection glimmered on the river, casting strange patterns that seemed alive. Shadows danced unnaturally across the village huts, and the air vibrated with a quiet hum, almost a song. Amina, Quito, and Mosey stood at the riverbank. Amina touched the water lightly, feeling the familiar pulse of the magic river. "They are coming," she said. Quito's hands clenched into fists, the power inside him stirring like a storm, ready to break free. "I am ready," he said. His voice carried the raw confidence of someone who had walked the forest as both beast and human. Mosey growled low, his fur bristling, and the smaller animals of the forest gathered near the edge, sensing the coming clash. Monkeys leapt from branch to branch, birds circled high above, and even the snakes that often slithered silently appeared, forming a protective circle around Amina and Quito. The villagers watched in awe and fear. They had learned to respect the forest and its creatures, but this display of nature's allegiance was beyond anything they had ever imagined. Far in the distance, the Night Eaters emerged again, stepping into the red glow of the moonlight. Their forms were larger and more terrifying, and the hunger in their eyes was palpable. They did not speak, but the silence carried the weight of generations of feral power. Amina held Quito's hand tightly, her calm presence steadying him. "You are not alone," she whispered. "We face them together." The Night Eaters advanced slowly, each step a drumbeat of danger. The forest seemed to respond, roots shifting underfoot, leaves rustling like whispers of warning. Mosey moved forward, massive paws crushing the soft earth, and let out a roar that mingled with the sound of the river, creating a resonance that was almost a warning to the hunters of ancient magic. The villagers were at a safe distance, but their hearts pounded in unison. The women clutched their children, and the elders murmured prayers to the spirits of the forest. Amina and Quito stood at the forefront, their eyes locked on the approaching figures. The night was heavy, and the red moon cast shadows that seemed alive, stretching across the forest and village alike. The Night Eaters stopped at the edge of the river, their glowing eyes fixed on Quito. The tallest of them spoke, voice like grinding stone. You cannot hide the river's magic. When it calls, we answer. You and your sister will face its full power tonight. Amina's eyes narrowed. Then you will see that the river chose the right family, she said. Her voice echoed, strong and unwavering, carrying over the murmuring forest. Keto stepped forward, his chest rising with a deep breath. I am no longer a child of the river. I am part of it, and I will fight to protect my people. Mosey shifted, his roar blending with the wind, as though the forest itself had joined in their defiance. And in that moment, as the red moon hung above and the night eaters waded across the river, the balance of the forest and village seemed suspended, held only by the courage of a girl who ate raw food, her brother who had survived a curse, and the lion who followed them like a shadow. The silence stretched, thick with anticipation, until the first step of the night eaters forward cracked the stillness like thunder. The sky above Quora had turned an unusual shade of deep crimson, the rising moon now glowing like a fire suspended in the heavens. Its light bled across the forest and village alike, casting long, twisted shadows across the mud huts and the soft, uneven paths. Even the river, which normally sang with ripples and laughter of water over stones, now flowed sluggishly, its surface reflecting the red moon like molten copper. The villagers sensed that something was not right. Mothers clutched their children tightly to their chests, and the hunters, who usually moved with confidence through the forest, moved slowly, eyes darting nervously to the shadows where the trees swayed without wind. Amina stood at the edge of the village, her bare feet pressing into the damp earth, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the forest met the open sky. Her dark skin gleamed in the moonlight, and the long, wild strands of her hair shifted like shadows with every movement. Beside her, Keto, taller now than most of the men in the village, exhaled slowly, his chest rising with the tension that pulsed through him. Though the curse had been lifted, the wildness of the forest still lingered in him, and he could sense things the villagers could not. Mosey, the massive lion, paced a small circle around them, his yellow eyes glowing with a protective intensity. The forest itself seemed to acknowledge their presence, as if the trees and the animals held their breath, waiting for what was coming. The elders gathered silently near the largest tree in the village, a broad boab whose branches had sheltered generations. Baba Alu, with his white hair like threads of cloud, looked toward the forest, his hands gripping his staff so tightly that his knuckles whitened. The villagers whispered, fearing even to speak aloud. They had heard the stories of the night eaters, but those were tales of distant forests, myths meant to teach children caution. Now, with the red moon above and the unnatural quiet in the river and forest, those tales had taken flesh. From deep in the forest came the first sound, a rustle that did not belong to the wind. Then a low, drawn-out cry that made even the bravest hunters pause. It was a sound filled with sorrow and hunger, a wail that seemed to stretch through the trees and burrow into the hearts of the villagers. Amina felt it in her chest, in the part of her that had drunk from the magic river. She recognized the call instantly. They are coming. She whispered, her voice steady, though a shiver passed over her skin. Keto placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the darkening tree line. They are close, he said. I can feel their hunger. They are not like the spirits we have known. They are older, stronger. They remember everything. Mosey growled low in his throat, the sound rumbling like distant thunder. The smaller animals, sensing the same danger, emerged cautiously from the undergrowth and the hut's corners. Monkeys hung silently in the branches. Owls stared wide, died from high perches, and even the snakes, usually hidden, slithered into positions that formed a protective circle around Amina and Keto. The forest itself seemed to rise, leaning into the village as if preparing for a confrontation that had been long foretold. The villagers remained huddled together, unable to move or speak. They were witnesses to a power older than their understanding, a force that had watched over the forest for generations. They could feel the air thicken as the red light of the moon seeped into every shadow, turning familiar shapes into grotesque silhouettes. The Night Eaters, who had appeared only as legends, now stepped silently from the forest, their forms partially hidden by the thick trees. They wore skins and bones, masks that were jagged and fierce, and their eyes glowed with yellow fire, unblinking, unrelenting. Amina's gaze did not falter. She stepped forward, her hand brushing against Kito's. He felt her calm energy, the same energy that had once tamed lions and communicated with the spirits of the forest. Together, they moved slightly ahead of the villagers, not in defiance, but as guardians. Mosey shifted to stand directly behind them, muscles tense, mane shimmering in the red moonlight. The Night Eaters stopped at the river's edge, watching, calculating, their silent presence heavier than the air itself. The tallest of them, a figure whose body seemed longer and leaner than any man, lifted a hand and pointed at Kito. A voice came then, low and resonant, sounding as if many voices spoke at once. "You have drawn the river's power into your blood. The balance is broken. We come to restore it." Kito stepped forward, placing himself directly between the villagers and the Night Eaters. His body radiated the subtle energy of the river's magic, enough to make the hair on the villagers' arms stand on end. "You cannot take him," Amina said, her voice ringing clear across the riverbank. "He belongs here. He is human now." The Night Eater laughed, a sound that seemed to ripple through the trees and make the shadows dance violently. "Human," the figure hissed. "He is neither fully human nor fully beast. He carries the river in him. He carries the hunger, and now it calls to us." The villagers watched, helpless, as tension thickened between the two sides. The firelight from their torches illuminated their faces with sharp contrast, highlighting fear and awe alike. Even the children, normally playful and mischievous, pressed their small hands against their mouths, eyes wide with the realization that the stories their elders whispered around the fire were true. The forest around them seemed to lean closer, every leaf and branch vibrating with anticipation. The red moon climbed higher, its reflection in the river shimmering and distorting the familiar shapes of the trees. Shadows of the Night Eaters flickered in the water, and the villagers felt as if the river itself was alive, watching, judging. Amina knelt slightly, touching the river with her fingers. The water pulsed beneath her touch, and a warmth of power flowed up her arm, calming yet warning her at the same time. "They are not like the spirits," she whispered. "They feed on the river's magic itself. They will take it if they can." Kito's hands clenched at his sides. His senses, honed by the curse that had once twisted him into a beast, picked up the subtle movements of the Night Eaters. Their eyes were fixed not just on him, but on the very essence of the river. "We must prepare," he said. "If they cross this river, they will not stop at the village. They will devour everything the river has touched." Mosey let out a deep growl, a vibration that shook the earth beneath their feet. The animals of the forest responded. The monkeys shrieked warnings, birds took to the skies in tight circles, and even the river creatures sensed the rising tension, splashing and stirring as if ready to defend the sacred water. The eldest of the villagers, Mama Kofi, stepped forward despite her age, carrying a small drum that had been used for generations to call the village together in celebration or warning. She began to beat it slowly, a steady rhythm meant to alert the spirits of the forest and the river of their intent to protect the village. The sound echoed across the red, lit landscape, carrying with it the hope and courage of Quora. Amina and Kito moved closer together, their hands touching lightly for strength. "We are not just protecting ourselves," Amina whispered. "We protect the balance. The river's magic flows through him, but it also flows through us, and the forest listens." The Night Eaters advanced a step closer, their silent approach a promise of impending confrontation. The tallest figure raised its hands slightly, and the air seemed to grow heavier, as if the magic in the river had become a physical weight pressing down on the earth. The water rippled unnaturally, reflecting not just the red moon, but shadowy forms that seemed to move within it, restless, watching, waiting. The villagers murmured prayers under their breath. The hunters tightened the grips on their spears, though none of them truly believed their weapons would match the power of the Night Eaters. Even the bravest men felt small and fragile in the face of such ancient magic. The children huddled closer to their mothers, their wide eyes reflecting both terror and fascination at the unfolding events. Amina stepped fully forward now, letting the moonlight catch her face. Her eyes glowed faintly with the river's magic, and her presence seemed to steady the villagers around her. Quito mirrored her stance, muscles tense, eyes sharp, sensing every movement of their approaching enemies. Mosey prowled slightly ahead, his tail flicking, ears alert, growls deep and low, warning the Night Eaters that any movement toward the villagers would be met with force. The red moon climbed higher, turning the river into molten light. The Night Eaters stopped, watching, their glowing eyes narrowing, studying the humans and the lion and the boy who had once been cursed. Their presence alone seemed enough to make the wind still, the trees stop rustling, and the river cease its gentle murmur. Quora had never known such silence. Then one of the Night Eaters stepped forward again, voice echoing in the stillness. "The river has given life to one who was not meant to receive it. We have come to restore the balance. The hunger calls, and it will not wait." Amina lifted her chin. "The river chose us, and we honor it," she said, her voice carrying across the water. "We will not allow you to take what belongs to the forest and its people." The tension stretched across the riverbank. Mosey's roar cut through the air, echoing off the distant trees, and the forest seemed to lean in closer, leaves trembling with anticipation. The villagers could only hold their breath, feeling the weight of a magic that was older than any of them, older than the red moon that glared down from the sky. Every heartbeat, every pulse of wind, seemed to carry the promise of what was to come. The Night Eaters' yellow eyes glowed brighter as they advanced again, moving silently over the soft earth, their shadows stretching unnaturally long under the crimson light. Amina and Quito braced themselves, the river's energy thrumming through them, Mosey at their side like a mountain of fur and muscle, ready to defend the family and village that had become their home. The river rippled, reflecting the fiery moon above, and the first steps of the approaching hunters cracked the silence like the beginning of a storm. The village of Quora, the boy and girl chosen by the river, and the lion who followed them like a shadow, stood ready at the threshold of an ancient confrontation that the forest itself seemed to hold in suspense. The red moon hung low over Quora, casting its eerie light across the mud huts and the quiet river. The villagers huddled together, their hearts pounding in unison, and the firelight flickered, throwing shadows that danced across anxious faces. The forest beyond the village seemed alive, holding its breath, waiting for what was about to unfold. Even the animals, normally wild and unpredictable, had gathered near the edges of the village. The monkeys watching from the trees, snakes coiled cautiously in the grass, and Mosey, the great lion, standing protectively between the villagers and the forest. Amina stepped forward, her bare feet pressing firmly into the soft earth. Her dark skin glowed in the red light, and her long, wild hair fell in thick waves across her back. Her eyes were steady, bright, and full of fire, and in her stance there was no fear, only determination. Beside her, Quito mirrored her movement, his tall, strong form tense with readiness. Though the curse had been lifted and he was human again, the river's magic still thrummed through him, giving him strength beyond ordinary men. He looked at the Night Eaters approaching from the forest and felt the pulse of their hunger, the raw power that had been feeding on rivers and forests for generations. "You will not harm them," Amina said softly, yet with a voice that carried to the forest edge, firm enough that even the Night Eaters paused. The leader of the Night Eaters tilted his head, yellow eyes glowing brighter under the red moon. "You have drawn power that is not yours to keep," he said, voice low and reverberating as if it came from the ground itself. "The balance must be restored. You cannot hide the river's magic." Quito stepped forward, placing himself squarely next to Amina. "The river's magic flows through us because it chose us," he said. "We honor it, we respect it, and we protect it. You will not take what belongs to the forest and its people." Mosey growled, a deep, rolling sound that shook the leaves on the trees and made the smaller animals scatter slightly in response. He lowered his massive head, tail flicking, muscles coiled and ready to pounce. The Night Eaters did not move forward, but their yellow eyes followed every breath and every heartbeat of the trio before them. The villagers, seeing the courage of Amina and Quito, began to feel a flicker of hope. Baba Alu lifted his staff, chanting quietly in the old tongue, calling upon the spirits of the forest for protection. The women and children followed suit, softly singing the songs of their ancestors, their voices carrying through the village and into the night. The river, calm and shimmering beneath the red moon, seemed to hum in response, as if acknowledging the bravery of those who stood before it. A sudden wind swept through the village, rustling the leaves and carrying the smell of damp earth and wildflowers. The Night Eaters moved in unison, slowly crossing the last line of trees. Their presence was heavy, oppressive, like shadows grown solid and alive. Yet Amina and Quito stood their ground, fearless, their hands brushing lightly as a silent promise of strength and unity passed between them. One of the Night Eaters lunged forward, a blur of movement, teeth bared, eyes hungry. But Mosey sprang ahead of them, powerful paws striking the earth with force that shook the ground. The lion's roar tore through the night, and the first Night Eater stumbled back, eyes wide with shock. Amina and Quito took advantage of the moment, moving forward together, their steps in rhythm with the beat of the villagers' drums, their spirits intertwined with the magic of the forest. "You cannot take him," Amina shouted, her voice carrying the weight of every trial they had faced, every danger they had survived. "We fight together, as family, as guardians of the river." The Night Eaters hesitated, their hunger momentarily restrained by the strength of unity before them. Quito raised his arms, summoning the power that still lingered in his blood from the river, and a faint glow emanated from him. The river responded, ripples spreading across its surface, reflecting the red moon in brilliant streaks. It was as if the forest itself had risen to aid them. Then, without warning, the Night Eaters charged together, moving like shadows across the earth. But Amina and Quito did not flinch. Mosey leapt forward, massive body colliding with the lead Night Eater, sending him sprawling backward. The other two hesitated, unsure of how to confront the trio who seemed to draw strength from each other and from the river itself. Amina raised her hands, calling upon the unseen spirits that had once guided her through the forest, and a gust of wind swirled around the Night Eaters, scattering leaves and dust, confusing and disorienting them. Quito stepped forward, his voice deep and commanding. "You will not harm our people, you will not take our magic, and you will not desecrate the forest. Leave now or face the consequences." The Night Eaters froze. They had faced rivers, storms, and wild beasts, but never a brother and sister bound by the magic of the river, never a lion who fought with the spirit of the forest itself. Slowly, almost reluctantly, they retreated toward the edge of the forest, their yellow eyes glowing one last time before they disappeared among the shadows of the trees. The red moon began to fade, its crimson glow softening to silver as dawn approached. The villagers released a collective breath they had not realized they were holding. Women wept quietly, children clutched each other, and the hunters lowered their spears, awe and relief washing over them. Baba Alu turned to Amina and Quito, his voice hoarse from shouting prayers and encouragement through the night. "You have done what no one else could. You have protected us all. The spirits, the river, the forest. They recognize your courage and your bond." Amina smiled, bending down to stroke Mosey's mane, the great lion leaning into her touch with a soft rumble. Quito's hand remained on her shoulder, and together they looked out over the village, seeing the unity and strength that had carried them through the night. The forest around them seemed to breathe again, leaves whispering and birds beginning their song, the river flowing freely as if the events of the night had never been able to harm it. The villagers gathered around the riverbank as the first rays of sunlight touched the water. The red moon had disappeared, leaving only a gentle silver light reflected in the rippling surface. Amina stood before them, quiet but resolute, and Quito by her side. Mosey, the silent guardian, prowled at their feet, the protector of both village and forest. Baba Alu spoke again, addressing everyone. "Remember this night," he said, voice strong. "Remember the courage of those who stood against the hunger, and remember the river that watches over us all. Respect it, protect it, and honor the bond between the forest and our people." The villagers nodded, understanding that the magic of the river, the courage of Amina and Quito, and the loyalty of Mosey had not only protected them, but also reminded them of the sacred balance of their home. From that day forward, the stories of the Night Eaters became part of the village lore, passed from parent to child, and the legend of the girl who ate raw food and her brother who survived a curse became a tale of bravery, love, and the enduring spirit of the forest. As the sun rose higher, illuminating the huts and the fields of yams, bananas, and cassava, life in Quora returned to its rhythm. Children ran to the river to play, hunters prepared their traps, and the women cooked their meals over the fire. But now every child and adult remembered that the forest, the river, and its magic were never to be taken lightly. Amina and Quito moved through the village, helping, laughing, and teaching the children about the balance of life in the forest, always accompanied by the ever-watchful Mosey, whose yellow eyes sparkled with pride and vigilance. And so, the legend of Amina and Quito, the siblings bound by the river's magic, the protectors of Quora, and the ones who faced the Night Eaters under the red moon, was told around the fire, whispered from one generation to the next. Their story reminded all who heard it that courage, love, and unity could stand against even the most ancient and fearsome of powers. If you enjoyed this story, remember to like, share, and subscribe to hear more tales of courage, magic, and African folklore. Every click helps these stories live on and reach hearts across the world, carrying the spirit of the forest and the bravery of Amina and Quito to all who wish to listen.